What a week for college football that it was and has been. Starting out with rivalry week last weekend. Isaiah Bond catches the prayer in Jordan Hare, Michigan Ohio State heavyweight contest. Washington survives the Apple Cup, and we're gonna have another great weekend of college football. We've already got some portal news. We've already had some big coaching moves made at both head coach and coordinator positions. This is going to be a big podcast episode, a lot of catching up to do, and 5 conference championship games to predict. We're going to get straight into some conference championship games here, starting out with the Big 12. Texas faces Oklahoma. Um, it's a 14.5 point line for Texas. They're favored by 14.5. Texas is going to win this game. I think they're going to cover as well. They just had their best offense performance of the year against Texas Tech last weekend. I think that's going to carry over into this game. Texas is the more talented team on paper. I think they have a better coaching staff, and they have all the matchup advantages. Oklahoma State has struggled to throw the ball. They've started to pick that up. Can they sustain that and improve on it heading into this game against a much more talented secondary than they faced? Oklahoma State is where they are because of Ollie Gordon, their running back there, who leads the nation in rushing yards per game, or in season rushing yards. But they face a top 8 run defense in Texas this week. So Ollie Gordon is going to get slowed down. Will they have the passing attack to balance that out? Oklahoma's other strength lies in red zone offense. Texas is top 3 in the country in red zone defense. All the matchups point towards Texas. Texas has a dynamic, balanced offensive attack. They can run the ball well, even though Jonathan Brooks went down. C.J. Baxter stepped very nicely in that role. Quint Ewers is playing at an elite level, distributing the ball. They've got weapons at receiver, Xavier Worthy, Mitchell, good tight ends, good pass protection. And they're playing an Oklahoma State defense that ranks in the hundreds in most defensive metrics. So I think Texas wins this game. I think they cover. I think they make their case for a playoff spot this weekend. Big Ten, Michigan versus Iowa. It is a 22.5 point line. Michigan is going to win this game as well. And I'm making the bold prediction that Iowa does not score a single point in this game. I'm not saying Michigan's going to cover because I can see Michigan winning this game 21-0 on 5 offensive drives, scoring touchdowns on 3 of them. Iowa's offense is horrendous. They are redefining what it means to be bad offensively. Nothing has worked for them the past couple years, but especially this season. And I don't see that changing against a Michigan team who I picked to lose against Ohio State, and they just dominated at the point of attack against Ohio State. I thought their physicality was going to be tested. They lose their best and most experienced offensive lineman, and they busted out a 30-yard running play for a touchdown on the next play, the very next play after he went down. They play with a just dominant physical run game, and J.J. McCarthy hasn't even had to step up in the passing game, and I fully believe he can step up in the passing game. I don't know if they have the weapons offensively to do that in terms of the receiving core, but in this game they're not going to need that. Maybe in playoffs that might come into play. But J.J. McCarthy is an elite quarterback. He makes plays with his legs. He makes plays scrambling, outside of the pocket to extend plays to throw the ball, but he also can run for first downs and make big plays on the ground. He's got a really good arm. He's got a really strong arm. He's just a really talented QB. They have a really efficient offense, and their defense, they just suffocate opponent offenses, and especially opponent QBs. I thought Ohio State was going to win that game up until the very last interception of the game. But Michigan did what they've done all season, and that's attack the QB and force the other team to beat themselves, and that's what they did. So that's full credit to Michigan. They're going to win this game. If Iowa was to pull the upset, there's 2 main things that have to happen. Number one, that's limiting offense possessions. That's having, even if you don't score offensively, that's 30 to 40-yard drives. 30, 35-yard drives that take up 4 to 5 minutes off the clock, and then forcing Michigan to beat you underneath and making them have long offensive drives, eventually scoring. The other thing Iowa has to do to win this game is non-offensive scoring. That's scoop and scores. That's pick sixes. That's special teams touchdowns. Iowa's offense is not going to be able to sustain against its defense, and their defense is very good. They can slow down Michigan's offense. Not enough, though. They're going to have some special teams players and defensive players step up to score them points. ACC Championship. The first of the remaining Power 5 unbeatens goes down in this game. It's an 8 p.m. game in Charlotte. Florida State struggled against Florida with Tate Rodemaker as QB. He's going to play a very physical Louisville defense that has shown an ability to get off the passer or get after the passer. They're not going to be able to rely. Florida State's not going to be able to rely on the run game this week. Trey Benson's had an incredible season. He has stepped up in a major way the past couple weeks with Jordan Travis getting hurt. Louisville is one of the top run defenses in the country and one of the best running defense efficiency teams in the country. And it is probably outside of Clemson the most physical, maybe Duke, the most physical team Florida State has faced this year. So Rodemaker's going to have to step up in a big way to win this game. I'm not saying he can't. He didn't really do that against Florida, but that's Florida rivalry week in the Swamp. And it is also questionable that he's going to play. He took a shot last game. So if he doesn't play, then I really don't like Florida State's chances. I think he is a talented QB, but I don't know if he's going to be able to step up enough to take pressure off of Trey Benson. He's got good weapons. He's got Keon Coleman. He's got Johnny Wilson. I think Louisville's defense is going to be able to harass him enough and force a couple of very big mistakes, maybe especially early on. And I think there's some vulnerability to Florida State's defense, especially from Jawhar Jordan, Louisville's running back. He has had an incredible year. Jack Plummer is quietly having one of the best seasons as a QB in terms of efficiency. I think this Louisville offense is going to be able to do enough against Florida State's defense, and I think the Louisville defense is going to be able to contain Trey Benson enough. And Rodemaker's, I just don't think he's ready yet. So I'm picking Louisville to pull the upset, win this game outright, and destroy Florida State's playoff hopes. However, if Florida State was to win this game, they should absolutely be in the playoff picture or a playoff team. They should be a top 4 seed. It doesn't matter if you don't think they're a top 4 team. They went undefeated. They did so in 2.5 games with the backup, really third string QB. They are absolutely a playoff team if they win this game. I don't think they're going to win this game. Pac-12, regular season rematch between what was one of my favorite games to watch this year. Oregon faces Washington. Oregon lost in the regular season, and they are 9.5-point favorites against Washington in the rematch. And I think Oregon is going to win this game, and I think Oregon is going to cover that spread. Oregon is fighting for their playoff chances. Even if they win this game, even though they are ranked the number 5 team in the country, I don't think they are a lock for the playoffs, depending on how some other games go, especially the Big 12 and the SEC championship when you start getting into resume comparisons. I do think Oregon wins this game and makes a pretty profound case to be the team that gets in, though. This game is going to be won on third down. You have the most efficient third down offense in Oregon facing the 89th ranked third down defense in Washington. If that statistic holds up, Oregon is going to win this game. I also don't think Washington will be able to match the physicality that Oregon has played with all season, but only gotten better and better at each week. You look at the trend of Oregon and Washington since that game. Oregon has won every game, but I believe the USC game by double digits, and Washington has won every game by 1 possession. They almost lost the Apple Cup, Washington did, and it's kind of similar to how TCU was last year. They win a whole bunch of close games in the regular season, and then they lose their conference championship rematch to Kansas State last year. They ended up getting in. In this case, if Washington loses, they will not be getting in. However, if they win, they are in. So that's what they're playing for. If they are going to win, it's going to take a dialed-in performance from Michael Penix, Rome Odunze, and Jalen McMillan, which certainly can happen. Penix and Odunze were dialed in during the regular season matchup. I don't think they're going to be dialed in enough. I think Oregon's D-line is going to be able to attack Penix in the backfield. I don't think Washington's run game is going to be good enough. I think Oregon has just gotten better and better each week, and I think they're going to win this game and cover. Last conference championship prediction here is the SEC championship. And even as I'm about to give this pick, I am going back in my back and forth in my head about who I think is going to win this game. This could be the national championship game, and this is going to be an SEC championship game for the ages. Alabama, #8 in the nation, versus Georgia, #1 in the nation. Very similar matchups, very similar strengths. Third down offense, third down defense. They're both going to be tested. They're both relatively good at it. They both play or have started to play very efficiently on offense. Alabama being the team that has started to play very efficiently on offense. And you just saw a rivalry week where Alabama was on 4th and goal at 31-yard line, and it took just a prayer thrown up to Isaiah Bond, who somehow came down with the ball. Terrible prevent defense by Auburn there. But that's what it took for them to win the Iron Bowl. Georgia, it was an 8-point game against Georgia Tech. They kind of pulled away from it, and then late in the game, Georgia Tech, made a couple runs at it to, lower the score back. But they struggled against Georgia Tech as well, which I fully expected in both games. I did not think both games were going to be easily won. It's rivalry weekend, and then you have the SEC championship next weekend. This is the premier rivalry that neither team acknowledges in the SEC, because these two teams, especially now, are kind of the keystone programs of college football, and that will continue regardless of who wins this game. But this game, if Alabama wins this game, there's no guarantee that they're in the playoffs. I think they should be. If Michigan, Oregon, Texas, and Alabama win this game, I think they should get in, and I think there's a debate for Georgia getting in over Oregon, even though I don't think that would happen. I think Georgia is the best team in the country. I think Alabama is either #2 or #3 right behind them. To me, this is Georgia's first real test. Missouri wasn't the real test. Kentucky wasn't the real test. Tennessee and Neyland Stadium wasn't the real test. I think this is their first real test, and that's okay. They also played Ole Miss. I don't think that was their real test either. This is the most talented and most physical team Georgia has played all year, and that same can be said for Alabama. This is the most talented and physical team Alabama has played all season. And in November and championship weekend, that's how it's supposed to be. So I still think there's some knowledge to be gained on both teams, but especially Georgia. When I look back at what has caused Georgia problems in the past 2 to 3 years of this just incredible run that Kirby Smart and the Bulldogs have been on, it's been teams with really dynamic passing attacks centered around an elite QB who can make plays to an elite receiving corps. 2021 in the SEC Championship, Bryce Young threw for 421 yards to Jameson Williams and John Mechie. John Mechie went down in that game. And then in the national championship game, Jameson Williams went down. Williams went down. And Georgia ended up winning the rematch in the national championship game. Not saying that's why Georgia won. It certainly didn't help Bama, though. Last year, in the first round of the playoffs against Ohio State, C.J. Stroud and Marvin Harrison were cooking Georgia's defense. Marvin Harrison went down, and the game kind of changed a little bit. It wasn't just Marvin Harrison, though. It was Cade Stover who also went down the tight end. And then you're relying on Emeka Egbuka. So that's kind of the game plan for beating Georgia the past couple of years is elite QB play and elite wide receiver play. Is Alabama that kind of team? Do they have an elite QB to stretch the ball down the field with an elite receiving corps? And my immediate answer to that is no, they don't. But that leads to the next question, which is this the same Georgia team as the past 2 years? And my immediate answer to that is, I don't know, but I'm leaning towards no, it's not. So can this version of Alabama beat this version of Georgia? Milroe is going to have to play a much more aware game. He had 2 plays against Auburn last weekend where he crossed the line of scrimmage and threw the ball down the field, and it almost cost him on that second play. However, you can shake off that kind of performance, and he's got to play the best game he's ever played. They're going to have to get him involved on the ground. They're going to have him stretch out plays in the pocket, not necessarily scrambling for yardage, but just extend plays long enough for receivers to get open. I think this Georgia secondary has turned into a really dynamic attack or dynamic secondary. I don't think Georgia's pass rush is going to be as effective, especially against Jalen Milroe, as he's going to be able to kind of elude some of this pass rush. And it's just the Georgia pass rush isn't as good as it's been the past couple years. With that being said, you got the two best coaches in college football squaring off right now in this game. It's going to be an incredible game. I think defense wins the game for whoever wins this game. I do think the over is going to hit, though. I think you could probably see a game where both teams are in the 30s, and then the defense makes a game-winning play or makes a stop on a game-winning drive. It could come down to a game-winning field goal, and Alabama has a really reliable field goal kicker. I think special teams special teams always matters, but I think it could really matter in this game. Since 2009, Nick Saban is undefeated in Atlanta. That includes conference championships, playoff and national championship games, and then regular season openers in Atlanta. I don't think that changes tomorrow. I think if you played this game 100 times, Georgia would win 53 to 54 of them, and Alabama would win 48 to 47 of them, or 47 to 46 of them. I think it's going to be one of those 47 or 46 tomorrow night. I think Alabama, with backs against the wall, even though Georgia kind of has their back against the wall as well, I think Nick Saban and the Crimson Tide are going to figure out a way to get it done. It's going to be an incredibly close game. I cannot wait to watch it. It's probably going to be game of the year for me. I don't really see either team running away with it. If a team was to run away with it, I think Georgia would run away with it. I think it's I still think it's going to be an incredibly close game for whoever wins. I am going to pick Alabama to win it, and I think that would make them a team in the 14 playoff. Last year, the 14 playoffs this year. So that's conference championship weekend. This past week, we've had some really big transfer portal news. We've had some big names already enter, especially at QB. You're looking at Dante Moore being crystal ball to Michigan State. DJ Uiagalelei is back in the portal. Might transfer to Oregon, his current rival. Florida State is also rumored to be in the picture. Riley Leonard is in the transfer portal looking at Auburn and Notre Dame. Cam Ward has received double-digit $1 million offers to come play for a different school, and he is now in the portal. And then you have the most successful passer in SEC history, Will Rogers, in the portal as well. So there's some big names. There's going to be a lot more big names in the portal, and not just at quarterback. I expect them across all positions. Another big name that I'm really watching for to see if he enters the portal is Texas A&M wide receiver Evan Stewart. That would be a huge get for whatever program could get him. You could look at Alabama. You could look at Ohio State. I think, he'd probably rack up just an incredible amount of offers to come play for a different school in the portal. In the right system, he could be an absolute game changer. He would be an absolute game changer for a team to pick up. Another big news in the portal is Clemson offered D2 offensive lineman Alan Herring. You say D2 is not good. Well, he's got double-digit Power 5 offers. He didn't give up a single sack this past season. He's probably got some technical refinement that would need to get done, but looks like Dabo Swinney might be starting to get a little active in the portal based off of the past couple of years' results. There's also been some major coaching news as well. Head coaches, coordinators, assistant coaches. Mike Elko, new head coach at Texas A&M. I think he's going to get the job done at A&M. I think he's going to turn him into a national contender. I like that hire a lot. I think there's going to be some growing pains. It's only going to be his third year being a head coach, but he was the prior DC, defensive coordinator at A&M. I think he's a really good culture builder. I think he's a really good football coach, too, in terms of X's and O's and player development. And I think he's going to be able to build an A&M organization. And he's got all the resources to do it at A&M, all the oil money to do it. Fran Brown is going to be the new head coach at Syracuse. He's the current DB's coach at Georgia. I think Syracuse hit this hire out the park. He has a ton of Northeastern coaching experience. He coached at Rutgers. He coached at Boston College. He coached at a MAC school. He's known to be a really, really aggressive recruiter, also a really good talent developer, and he's coming off some championship pedigree now with the Georgia Bulldogs, and he's got that Southeastern recruiting kind of pipeline as well. That he's going to be able to get some talent up to New York, Syracuse, New York now. I think this is a great hire for Syracuse. I think they needed a really good hire. In my opinion, even though Dino Bowers was doing a good job, especially for Syracuse, the program was kind of trending downwards, and I think they've got some upward momentum now to build on. Maybe get a couple of good portal pieces. If any Georgia DBs enter the portal, you could look at Syracuse as a potential landing spot for that. Jonathan Smith was hired as the new Michigan State head coach. Once again, just another absolute home run hire for what can be considered a home run hire in college football today. He rebuilt just an absolutely left for dead Oregon State program into back-to-back top 25 seasons. 10 wins last year. They're going to finish, well, he finished with 8 regular season wins this year. He's shown that he knows how to use the portal. He's shown that he knows how to develop talent. He's shown that he can build a culture. What I'm really looking to see out of him now is how effective can he be at recruiting, especially in Michigan, especially having to deal with Michigan and Ohio State and Penn State in your conference, and next year Oregon, Washington, Southern Cal, and UCLA all in the same conference as well. He's going to have to branch out. I don't know if he's bringing his same staff with him. His defensive coordinator is being promoted to head coach at Oregon State, so I don't know what he's going to do staff-wise, but I do think Jonathan Smith will be able to make Michigan State a really competitive team for years to come and be able to do it consistently, which you haven't really seen in years past with Michigan State. Mississippi State filled their coaching vacancy with offensive coordinator from Oklahoma, Jeff Lebby. I think this is a really good hire as well. They're going back to what's worked for them. They had Dan Mullen. They had Mike Leach, two very brilliant offensive minds. They bring back a guy who was coaching one of the top offenses in the country this year, and they scored 65 points 3 times this year. I think it's a good hire. I think they'll be able to be a competitive team and pull off a couple big upsets a year. Mississippi State's going to be a really hard place to win at, especially consistently and at an elite level. James Madison head coach Kirk Cignetti is moving to Indiana for the Hoosiers. They fired Tom Allen. I think it's a really good hire. He's an older guy. I think he's going to be able to build Indiana into a respectable Big Ten program. I think it's probably a stepping stone job, though, depending on how long he stays in coaching. Some other head coaching news. The Houston job is still open. There's a couple of different candidates for it. You're looking at Jeff Traylor, the UTSA head coach for Houston, or for the Houston job. Cliff Kingsbury, the current offensive analyst for Southern Cal, is being looked at. I think Willie Fritz is the hire to make there, the Tulane head coach. He's done an absolutely incredible job there, but we'll see what happens there. It's a Power 5 job now. It's in Houston. You've got money. You've got, in-state recruiting. It can be a really competitive team, a really competitive program, a really competitive job. They just got to find the right guy to do it and do it for the long term. Dave Aranda at Baylor was retained. Sam Pittman at Arkansas was retained. And Chip Kelly at UCLA has so far been retained. If Dante Moore does transfer away and maybe lose a couple other pieces on that UCLA team, that might change. I don't expect them to make a move, though. Some coordinator positions that are still open. Well, one big one is the Southern Cal defensive coordinator position. I don't know what's taken Lincoln Riley so long. I think they should make a hire as soon as possible. Go work on some pieces in the portal, maybe add a couple of additional recruiting pieces. But that is a huge job to watch, because if Southern Cal could get a top 50 to 60 defense, maybe a little bit better than that, Southern Cal could win a national championship with the way that Lincoln Riley develops QBs and coaches offense. Arkansas, new offensive coordinator, Bobby Petrino, is going back to Arkansas. I think it's a really good hire. KJ Jefferson, I think, will end up transferring away, their QB, and I think they'll go and find a QB better fit for a Bobby Petrino system. It's crazy saying Bobby Petrino is back at Arkansas, but I think it's a good hire, and I think it's a hire Sam Pittman needed to make. His Arkansas program is trending downwards, and I don't know I think it might be too little too late, but if any hire is going to kind of get this team back on the right track, I think it's Bobby Petrino. I think he's going to be able to do some things offensively that they have definitely lacked over the past 2 years. Kansas offensive coordinator Andy Kotelnicki has been hired for Penn State's offensive coordinator position. I'm a Penn State guy. I always pick Penn State to win the big game. They always let me down. I picked them to make the playoffs this year. This hire is going to make me want to pick them to make the playoffs next year. Andy Kotelnicki has just fielded some absolutely dynamic running offenses at Kansas. He's developed Jalon Daniels, and he's also developed Jason Bean to, Jason Bean pulled off the upset against Oklahoma. I think he's a really good offensive mind. He does a lot of trickery. He has some pretty complex offensive packages and schemes that he runs. But I think he's going to be able to do a lot with Penn State's running attack, and I think he's going to be able to really unlock Drew Allard at QB for Penn State. And if they can go out and get a dynamic receiver in the portal, Penn State is going to be back in the playoff conversation this year. They're going to miss some pieces, or they're going to lose some pieces on the O-line. They're going to lose some pieces on defense. They're recruiting at a good enough level to where they can replace those pieces and maybe you'll get some in the portal as well. But this is a great hire by James Franklin, in my opinion. We'll see what happens for him. There's also 2 assistant coach openings at Clemson for the Clemson Tigers. Tyler Grissom is being retained at receivers coach. I think that's a solid move. I think the receiving core for Clemson came around nicely. But the O-line coach has been fired. I'm hearing Matt Luke, former Ole Miss head coach, might be an early candidate for that job. I think it's a coaching decision that needed to be made for Clemson. Just inconsistency and really just bad pass protection at O-line the past several years for Clemson. And really, not really great recruiting except for last year's cycle, and they're struggling to recruit the line this year. So I think this is a hire that needed to be made. I think Dabo is going to go out. I think he's going to be pretty aggressive about who he gets. I think he's going to get a really good guy. Lamonsky Hall, the defensive ends coach for Clemson, I think this was a mutual parting of ways. I don't know if he wanted a bigger role and just wasn't going to be able to get it at Clemson or what happened there. I think Clemson's going to be able to fill that role. He was a good coach, and he was a good recruiter. They still got Nick Eason, and they've still got a lot of talent on the defensive line. I think Clemson will be able to fill this role as well. Another thing to look at is Clayton White, South Carolina's defensive coordinator, is being retained, it looks like, as defensive coordinator. They didn't play great defensively all year. They had some improvement at the end of the year, but it was against less than dynamic offenses. Their performance against Clemson was pretty good defensively. So we'll see what happens in the offseason. They're going to have to improve that run defense. That run defense is really bad. It is really, really bad, and it's what cost them a lot of games. Clemson was able to run against South Carolina's will. There was just nothing they could do to stop him. So he's coming back. I expect some pretty aggressive moves in the portal to be made, or at least attempted to be made for South Carolina. They got to do something, and they got to improve that running offense as well. Juice Wells is also back in the portal. I don't know if he can return to South Carolina since he's entered in the portal for the second time, but it looks like he might be leaving. But you got Lenore Sellers, Spencer Rattler care for the draft, so you got Lenore Sellers. He's a potentially game-changing QB, so that's something to give you a more positive move for Carolina fans out there. But this podcast is going to be a great weekend of college football, conference championship weekend, selection Sunday. Going to have some reactions to that, and still expect a lot of huge moves to be made on the coaching staff. And then December 4th, the transfer portal officially opens, and that's when chaos is just going to unfold across college football and the college football landscape. Thank you all for watching.